Yeah, so thank you everyone for joining my talk. And today, the topic of my talk is SEO performant React apps. So, uh, so today I'll be talking about what is SEO. Is React good for SEO? How Googlebot works, like how our page gets into Google search. How can we help Googlebots and the challenges that we face while optimizing React apps, and how do we overcome those challenges? So at last, I'll be walking you through how can we test our web pages. So before I begin my talk, I'll introduce myself a little bit. So my name is Kiran Rawat, and I am a software engineer at 3 at Walmart. So this is my Twitter handle. Yeah, so formerly I was working at Make My Trip. So there I extensively worked on SEO optimization for my website. So today mostly I'll be talking over SEO optimization, like how we can optimize our React apps for SEO. Yeah, so let's begin. So let's consider I have a website which is a large content based website, so which is built in React, and I want it to be discoverable. So I want my website to be on Google search. So what do I do now? So and how do I do it? So do I really need SEO? So before we get into the question like how do we do it or what I can do to make my website discoverable, let's understand what is SEO. So, SEO, it stands for search engine optimization, and it is a process in which we are optimizing our web pages better for search engines. And we can talk SEO mainly for three things. So, the three things are content, strategy, and technology. So, content is basically what is our website all about. So, it talks about our website, the descriptive information about our website, what is the purpose of our website, what problems my website is going to solve. So, that comes under content, and the strategy is how are we going to do it? How are we improving the appearance of my website on the Google search, and how can we gain more organic traffic? So this all comes under strategy. So the third thing is the technology, which I'll be more focusing on today. So SEO is also a technical process. It directly deals with our code. So we'll see like how we can optimize our pages. Yeah, so is React good for SEO? So there's a misconception that React kills SEO, but it doesn't. So it is not a design goal of React, but we can say that React applications we can optimize for SEO. So before we get into how do we optimize our web pages, let's look into the process like how a Google bot works and how my web page can get into Google search. So a Google crawler is a Google bot. So it maintains a crawl queue in which there will be a lot of URLs which needs to be indexed and crawled. So once this crawler becomes idle, it picks up the next URL from the crawl queue, and it sends an HTTP request to that URL. In return, it gets an HTML document. So this Google bot determines whether this HTML is enough or does it need JavaScript to be executed. If it does, then it sends it to render queue, and the renderer will execute the JavaScript, and it will return a rendered HTML to the processing unit. So what this processing unit does is it fetches all the URLs that are present in the rendered HTML, and those URLs will be sent back to the crawl queue. So once this rendered HTML we have received, this goes for indexing. So this is a basic process like how a web page gets into Google search. Yeah, so now we know that I have a big content website and I want it to be discoverable, and I know that I need to optimize my web pages, and I also know the process, right? How Googlebot works. So Googlebot actually needs to look at over 130 trillion URLs. So this is a huge number, and this keeps on increasing. So why not help Googlebots? So these are some strategies which I'm going to talk about, this we can implement while making our SEO pages. And so the first one here is we can actually make sure to link our pages to each other. Let's say I have a travel website, and in that website I have four different products. So what I can do is, on my home page, I can provide several links for my different products, so that once Google crawls my home page, it gets the other links for my pages too. The second thing is Google bot doesn't click stuff. So if we have provided buttons and other click handlers, it doesn't care about all those things. Web only needs links, so it's better to provide more links. Third thing is, don't use hash URLs. So hash URLs are basically used to render dynamic content. So basically, Google bots ignore all the hash URLs, so it's better to ignore hash URLs. The next point is, we should have high quality content, so that it depicts our what my website does, and what it is all about. The next point is, add robots.txt. So this is something like this. So robots.txt is a file which is present in a root directory, and in this file we can actually mention the things like, we can give sitemap URLs. So I'll talk about sitemaps later. We can also provide the user agent. So this will talk about, so here I have given all. So it means that I want all crawlers can crawl my website. So for this, we can also mention what URLs we want to allow for indexing and crawling, and what URLs we don't want to allow. So we can mention that with allow and disallow. Yeah, so we can also create sitemaps. Really help if you have a large content website. It will be very difficult to link your pages. So what we can do is, we can actually create sitemaps. Sitemap is a file, XML file, where we kind of keep all our URLs, photos, videos, and other things that are in our website, and this contains all the URL sets we can see here. So this basically tells Googlebot, hey, that we have these many URLs, and I want you to crawl these many URLs for us. Yeah, so the next thing is meta tags. Meta tags are very important for SEOs. So it describes what our page is all about. It tells what the title, what the description, and what the content of the page is. So we have a plugin called React Helmet, which we can use for providing meta tags. So here we can see that we have used this plugin Helmet, and we can provide all the meta tags here. I have provided a name for the page, and the content also we can provide. Yeah, so the next thing is, we should have canonicals if we have a scenario, something like this. So let's say I have two different URLs, one for the desktop version and one for the mobile version, and both the URLs point to the same page. So it becomes non-indexable because we have different URLs, but those two URLs are pointing to the same page. So how can I resolve it? So we can actually provide a canonical page which becomes indexable. So how can we do this is, mm, in yeah, so using React Helmet, what we can do, in the link tag we can provide canonical, and in the href we can give the main content, which is represented by the duplicate content. So by this we can actually remove this issue. So the last point is, provide explicit clues about the page using structured data. So structured data is very important when it comes to SEO, because it makes the process easier for Google bots. So I I have a scenario here. Let's say I have this website where I have different components, right? So if we look at a single component here, let's say I'm looking for this breadcrumbs component, which has three sub components here. So what structured data looks like? So it something looks like this. So this is basically we are providing Google Bot. This is a kind of a vocabulary, you can say, schema.org. So basically, Google Bot understands this structured data more efficiently. So we have given here the position one item, which is home, then the position second item, which is train tickets, and the third item, which is the name of the page. So this way we can provide structured data. This really helps in SEO rankings as well. So now let's talk about the major challenges that we face while building SEO pages in React apps. The first main pain point here is empty first pass content. As we all know that React is a client side rendered application, right? So and most of the crawlers find it very difficult to execute JavaScript. It's an expensive process, so it takes time to execute JavaScript. So the first content that we get is empty. So it's not a very good thing for SEO, because Google when Google crawls our site and it sees that the first pass content is empty, then it won't help in indexing and ranking our page. So how can we solve this issue? So we have something called pre-rendering. So it is an approach where we, preload all the HTML elements and cache those on the server. And based on, so there's a tool called prerenderer.io. So it's a service which checks whether the request is coming from a bot or it is coming from a non-bot. So if I request any page, so I am a non-bot, so the page loads normally. So if the request is from the Google crawler, then it checks the pre-renderer checks the user agent. It's a bot. Then it fetches the pre-rendered cached HTML, static HTML, and sends it to the bot. So the second workaround is server side rendering. So as we all know that it fastens the initial render. So this we can do with hydration, as well as this we can do with there are frameworks present like Next.js and Gatsby. So with hydration, we can actually load the static HTML first and then attach the event listeners once it's on the browser. So if the markup is present, it's on browser, we hydrate the component. Otherwise, if it's on server, we render the components. So the second main pain point here is loading time and user experience. So so the core web vitals are very important for rankings and indexing. So to improve our core web vital performances and our website performance, we can opt for server side rendering. We already talked about it, and we can also go for caching. So this depends on the use case. For example, I have some pages which kind of show static content. There I can go for caching. It will reduce the load time. And also we can have a CDN to serve all the static contents like CSS and JS, and we can use responsive images to load to reduce the load times. And we can also optimize our scripts, whether to load them beforehand or after we have rendered the page. And we can also go for dynamic imports or code splitting or lazy loading. So this is basically to load our components based on the demands. So this way we can actually reduce our loading time and enrich our user experience. So the next pain point here is soft 404 error. So this basically happens. So this is actually a page which is not found, but we get somehow. So this is called soft 404 error. So it's not a very it's not very good for SEO, or if we see something like this on Google search, right, and error occurred. So how can we solve this? Like we can either we can have a component as not found, where we can redirect whenever we get any error, then we can redirect to the page that gives 404. And also we can update robots meta tags. So in this meta tag, we actually telling Googlebot, see, hey, this page has an error and we don't want it to crawl. So set this attribute as no index. So we are telling the Google crawler, don't index this page. Yeah, so at last, we can test our web pages. We have two tools here. First one is the mobile friendly test, where you can actually give your page's URL and see the results. Like, it tells you whether the page is mobile friendly or not. If there are any JavaScript errors, it shows all the stack traces to that. And this is the site for this. And the next tool that we have is Google Search Console, where you can also inspect the URL and check like whether it when it is last crawled and is it indexed or not. So you can see many other important things here also. Let's say this coverage thing, where you will actually see what all errors have happened and what are the valid URLs and what all you have excluded, and also you can see the impressions and everything. So these two tools really help while you build SEO or performance web pages. Yeah, so this was all that I have for today. Like, if anybody has any questions, I'll be available for getting all those questions. Yeah, thank you so much for the time.